for thou art with me. Say it with me, beloved, for thou art with me. Those words are taken from the scripture in Psalm 23, verse 4, as we consider our revival month with the theme, Fear No Evil. We understand, beloved, that we are in perilous times. We're in pandemic times. We're in vitriolic times. We're in times of great injustice and inequality like we've never seen in our generation. And so when you hear those words, for thou art with me, let them hit your spirit. Let them encourage your heart, because that is exactly what our ancestors understood as they fought their way to freedom to get to this point where we are in 2020. We're on the verge of making history yet again if we do what is right, and if God shows favor to us. We will see our first African American vice president female, Senator Kamala Harris, who's been chosen as Joe Biden's running mate. What a way to turn the tide of history if we were to elect Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris as the Vice President of the United States in the midst of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and countless others. Black Lives Matter, beloved. That's what we're here to say. Every life matter, absolutely, but Black lives matter. And a few of our members from the church have come together to continue the discussion with this week's focus on what does our Blackness look like in our generation. Tune in your heart and your ears to hear some of the important stories and moments shared by our Berean brothers and sisters as we live out what it means to be Berean Black.
Jehovah Shammah, you are with me, and you
For my generation, which a lot of people think that my generation is just crazy. And at times I have to agree. Like sometimes just like, okay, that was a little out of hand. But I think that my generation is very strong and determined to accomplish what's on their heart. And they'll do it by any means necessary, by acting freely and not caring what people think about their actions.
You know, I feel like I was a kid, I was taught, not just as a man, but just as a Black man, just be tough and like to know what I'm about and don't let anybody change how I feel about certain things. And obviously I've kept that to myself and I kept that close to me as I've been growing up in this world. But at the end of the day, all we want to do is be accepted and try to be equal amongst, the rest of everybody else.
I think my generation is, in an interesting position because I think on one hand, we are more vocal and we want to be able to express, our identity, our Blackness, through artistic means. And I think on the other hand, we're looking to kind of settle down in certain aspects of our life, professionally, I think family-wise too. And so it's really like a tricky space to be in, but we're still committed to the sort of like transformational changes that need to happen.
Like, I think that we've gone away from our Black being beautiful and our Black being brilliant to now just kind of mourning the devastation of everything that's around us, that we're forgetting that we haven't gotten through this quarantine without Black art, without Black perspective, without Black influence in each and every system that is in our world today. Like, we have enacted so much change that people haven't really acknowledged the fact, oh, it's Black people that did that. Oh, it's Black people that had a stand.
Right. They're just getting to Black Lives Matter. Damn, I thought my life always mattered.
I feel like the term arose because even after so much of what we've done in this country to realize equity and equality, we still have to say, but our lives though, they matter. And now we have a bunch of people of other communities coming together to say that as well. Blackness for our generation is just moving into a space of humanity
as Black people. And I think it also shows that it shows our strength, that no matter how much we are oppressed, we are going to find a way to let people know that we are here, we are human, and we are not going anywhere.
So I was born in 1972.
Hey.
So I
just
I
made
was
it,
there. Just made it. I was there. So I think what's going on now is a lot different from then. I think then it was really addressing a stigma created by a lack of self-esteem in our community because we were deprived of our history. This generation is a lot different because this generation has actually seen a Black president, and that was something that was unthought of. It was even a possibility. I think the other big difference too is, in addition to self-respect, you're trying to figure out how to assert ourselves politically, how to defeat racism within our own strength, and within our own resources. And frankly, we failed. We didn't fail because of a lack of effort. We failed primarily because we were trying to address an issue of the heart, seeking and pursuing and pushing for laws and policies and decisions that would, quote unquote, make racism illegal. And that never occurred. All it did was just make folks more aware that they had to be more subtle with their racism.
There's been no justice for Black people. We are only being tolerated by the status quo. They allow us to exist only as we follow the rules. They have put in place, the rules they have put in place to keep perpetuities, that's the wealth of the country, for themselves.
We are still in the pursuit of justice, and we cannot afford to allow other people to dictate what justice looks like for us. Far too often, we are comfortable with allowing too many people into the conversation who benefit from the current systems that foster and promote injustice. And because we lack political equality in many areas, too often we have to settle for someone else who has access to that circle, really highlighting and dictating our terms of what justice looks like. We need to get to a point where we can silence those who really need to listen, but in actuality, they feel that they are entitled to speak on our behalf when that is not the case.
I feel like, well, for me, I have to speak for myself. I was looking for a leader. I felt that, particularly I was very proud when, David Dinkins was our mayor, the first time ever, our first African-American mayor. And I thought that was just like, okay, we're moving forward. But then with all the racial issues that came up, and when Rudolph Giuliani emerged, I just felt like we were going back. I felt like the hip hop community was being looked to for the next voice rather than a political leader. I really wasn't in church then, so I can't even say what the church was doing, but just being, in my culture and my community, I saw more of activism rising up from them looking at the hip hoppers and social conscious rap, Public Enemy, those kind of folks, Brand Nubians. That's where I felt I saw more of like this kind of justice push coming through music. We had a period where we were looking for somebody to rise up, and at that time also I thought Al Sharpton would be a lot more of that kind of king leader. But then I realized that it's not going to be a person, as we keep saying. It's got to be a collective group of people. I think Blackness for us is still the search for justice. I feel like we're at a standstill, but we are still in a space where we can definitely progress forward.
Well, my generation basically is looking at what's going on today. When I look around, even right here in the borough of Brooklyn, I remember that the first Black deputy borough president in Brooklyn, everybody was all excited because a Black man now is going to be the deputy borough president of Brooklyn. Now we have a Black man as the borough president of Brooklyn. So the progress is being made, and young people are really, really pushing. And so my generation is basically saying, let's keep hope alive and encourage the young people to continue to move along, because we have more Black elected officials now than ever.
In terms of the aspirations and the hopes of this generation, they exceed what we had then. That's what I think is different about now, though, and that's why I'm so proud of this generation. The kids are actually making the videos. They're getting the word out so quickly and so effectively and unfiltered, and really managing to build alliances with other communities, like Deanna was saying, around this. And that's the big difference for me. This time around, it's the first time I'm actually hearing white folks talk about being anti-racist. And white folks actually talk about, this is our problem. This is something that we gotta face.
What I would say too is, when you talk about other communities, I don't think we heard that much as we're hearing now about the LGBTQ, which I keep messing that up, community. They're out there a lot, and there's really trying to show not only are they Black, but they're human too, like everyone else, you know, and it really impresses me that they are willing to step out. They're stepping out much more than had been in the past, and I really think it's a good thing. We have to have an appreciation for the fact that they are God's children too, you know, and that is what it has not always been welcome, you know, in terms, but they're God's children too, and they're here trying to make it through just like everybody else is trying to make it through. So they too have had their demonstrations as part of this Me Too or Black Lives Matter, and that I think has been very important to move us ahead.
When I was in the 6th grade, Al Van's wife was my 6th grade teacher. And she made us very conscious of who we are and where we came from. And from that day on, I was Angela Davis. I wasn't going to be watching no revolution on a television. I was going to be a part of it. And I instilled that in my daughter, to where she came from, whose shoulders she stood on. You know, even with the voting, I said, you know, people got killed to, you know, vote. Make sure you put your vote in, you know.
I say to people all the time, don't forget to cast that vote, because that too brings about power and brings about respect. The fact that in years past, they said, well, we can treat them any way we want to treat them because they can't vote. And you had to take a test to vote, like, you know, in terms of, you know, how many peanuts in a jar and all kinds of, how many apples in a bushel. I mean, just crazy kinds of things that had no answer, and they would just do it, you know, just to sort of create that kind of atmosphere and climate that Black folks felt that we would never be able to overcome. But we now begin to see a little light, and the young people are responsible for that light. So at least we older people can just sort of continue to encourage you and pray for you too.
Oh, freedom.